Hello and welcome to World of Tanks with Tarapsikis. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not very skilled or very knowledgeable about the tier 10 tanks, simply because I haven't played any except on the test servers. So this video is not so much about the replay as it is about the principle. Which principle? Economy in World of Tanks. So I have long held the opinion that the economy is slightly skewed. While I do agree that if you don't do well, you should pay the price in credits, maybe even experience, you should not be penalized for doing well. So, immediately our target, Fisco77 and his Sheridan, I'll just call him Fisco, runs out into the open field. Let me just open up the menu up there for you guys, and gets a couple of spots and a little bit of spotting damage. You'll notice he uses his tank very well. He uses auto drive forward and backwards, and it does seem that he can zoom out a bit more than is normal. I'm not exactly sure about that. Anyway, a very nice shot he puts into the WZ-132 there, just demonstrating the power of the derp gun in this tank. It wasn't even fully aimed in, and he did quite a bit of damage and tracked his opponent, which allowed his friendlies to take him out. So I'm sure almost everyone is aware of the spotting mechanics and spotting rewards. For spotting enemies, you get a small XP bonus, but no credits if I'm not mistaken. But for doing spotting damage, that is your team doing damage to the tanks while you're spotting them, you get half or 50% of the experience and credit earned. So that would effectively mean if this Fisco had been spotting for himself, he would already have raked in just over 1,000 damages worth of credits. Being a top tier or tier 10 light tank, he has 1,600 hit points, so one would expect that to be a loss if he were to die now and finish the game. However, if you, in my opinion at least, if you do the same amount of damage as you have hit points, you should be able to pay for the repair cost of your vehicle. And if you do more damage, then you should be able to pay for your ammunition, depending obviously on what kind of ammunition you use. For the purposes of economy, I'll only consider standard rounds. Premium rounds do come at a premium, and this is not part of my discussion. Obviously, if you prefer to shoot more premium rounds, you will pay the price. But if you play standard rounds, I feel that if you stick to standard rounds and you do well, you should be rewarded with credits as well, not only medals. So Fisco's up to over 800 spotting damage. That would put him on nearly his own hit points on reward damage. I'm counting half his spotting damage and all of his damage he did himself. Obviously, if some of the damage he did was spotted by someone else, that experience and credits will have to be shared with them appropriately. Very nice shot into the Emil there, obviously spotting for himself. That puts his damage total to around his own hit points, where the spotting damage he has done should compensate for the gap at the very least. Right, so this position being very powerful, especially if you've got some gun depression, because if the enemies come forward to try to shoot at you, they will pay the price, because you usually have TDs, in this case T28 and Scorpion G, and perhaps even the further T28 might be able to help. So if you do come forward to try to take him out in this position, you will pay the price by being punished by the TDs on his team. However, if you're in this position and you push forward too much, you will also expose yourself to similar fire from the red team. So it is a nice position to be able to take, but it is important to know the limitations of your tank and to know exactly when you have a chance of actually using this position. Fisco doing quite a good job of remaining below the gun line, so difficult to hit, and obviously artillery at this tier tends to avoid the light tanks because of their speed and acceleration. Just for that, I'm sure that the next light tank game I play, I will be targeted by artillery. Right, this one, the shot not doing much damage, but he was spotted, and the IS-3 was able to take quite a big chunk out of Fisco's hit points. So if you look at the map, it's quite even. Even though the friendlies are 1 kill ahead, they have not gained control over enough of the map to really make that count. So the friendly team will have to do something to gain control of more of the map if they are to actually win this one. Then Fisco notices the Rheinmetall behind him and takes yet another hit, this one from the UDES, putting him on only 55 hit points. This is quite a problem because even a splash from the HE rounds on many of the opponents he's facing will be able to take him out. And from this position being the big disadvantage, it's very difficult to fall back. So you do expose yourself, or at least depend a lot on your team if you take up this position. That you depend on your team to support you and provide you with covering fire, and also to shoot the enemies that you've spotted. Otherwise there would be no reward for doing this kind of thing. So if your team does not support you, then the enemies should notice that and they can come forward and take you out. But if your team does support you, as was the case here, then you can do quite a good round. Right, some more spotting damage coming in there, and you'll notice that Fisco is not even trying to get a line to shoot at these two enemies. He's only spotting them for his team. Now that is something I call trigger discipline. It's something that's quite important to know when not to shoot. I've made a video about this topic where often you need to know the limitations of your vehicle and actually rely on your friendlies to do the damage while you do the spot. Unfortunately, this is the end of Fisco's game. I'm going to speed up the replay. Hopefully I can switch to another player. Unfortunately that's not the case. Right, I've speeded up a bit. So back to the principle of this game. The economy and world of tanks. I personally feel if you do your own hit points and damage, you should be able to repair for that amount of hit points in your vehicle. And if you do in excess of that damage, then you should make a profit. Or at least it should waylay the costs of credits. Now, we're going to be looking at the in-game stats, because that's important for the economy. This was an ace tanker, and you'll notice that 8 initial spots and spotting damage on 9 different enemies was done by Fisco. Very good job there. The team damage, you'll see he's number 1 in experience in both teams by quite a margin, and his damage is also right up there. Overall number 2 in both teams. On the personal details, you'll see only because he was running a premium account did he manage to make any profit at all. But if he hadn't been running a premium account, he would have made a loss of nearly 13,000 credits. However, he did resupply consumables, which is also optional. So if you bring that into account, and if he had been using the normal consumables, not the large repair kits, the premium consumables, he should have been able to level out or perhaps even make a profit. Making the sum there, he should have been able to make about 5,000 credits profit in this game. However, my point remains, if you look at the repair cost there, I'm quite sure that the amount of damage he did and the amount of spotting damage he did was more than enough to should cover at least 2 or 3 times the repair cost of his vehicle. However, the income was barely double that. So Wargaming, hopefully you'll see this video eventually. I really hope that at some point you reconsider the economy and the profitability of higher tier tanks. And thank you for watching.